Ballycorus Lead Mines is a former lead mining and smelting centre located at Carrickgalligan Hill in South County Dublin. Today, the ruined smelting tower atop it is a landmark and curiosity for passing hikers, but there is more to these ruins than first meets the eye. Mining of lead began here in 1807 and was taken over by the Mining Company of Ireland, or MCI, in 1826. The vein was discontinuous, so although mining continued until it became exhausted in 1863, yields varied greatly during this time, as did the number of miners employed. This is the granite smelting tower atop Ballycorus Hill. It's 80 feet high and was originally even higher. Old photographs show that there was an additional layer of bricks atop the surviving granite structure. It was deliberately built this high, so that the wind would blow away the toxic lead fumes. This was a very impressive chimney tower at the time it was built, and it's actually one of a kind in Ireland. Today I am interviewing Dr. Brendan McAvoy, former lecturer of NCI, who lives beside the lead mines. Brendan, what were the techniques for prospecting for lead in the early 1800s, and how would the mine have been excavated?
Well, people think of mining, they always think of prospecting and digging. This was surface mining, so everything actually was on the surface. So there's no need to actually drill for any of the deposits. They're mostly just on the surface. So it's usually hard work, shovel and spade, and that was it.
How many workers were employed at the mines and at the lead works, and were they skilled or unskilled, and were they highly paid considering the health hazards they faced?
Well, there was actually a company called the Irish Mining Company, which is the first company for mining ever in Ireland. And there were only 100 men working, it was all men working in the mine itself. But the mine actually was quite profitable, and they seemed to have a very humane attitude to the workers. So I'd say they were well paid, but certainly highly skilled.
I am now west of the chimney, and all around me are piles of spoil dating back to over 150 years ago. If you rummage through these spoil piles, you might come across a lump of grey lead ore. Lead was in great demand during the Industrial Revolution. It was used to make roof waterproofing and gutters in the rapidly expanding suburbs of Dublin. Less well known is that silver was discovered here in 1840, and profits for the company hit an all-time high. The mining ended in the 1860s, but that was not the end for this facility. The MCI had many other operations in the country, including Glendalough, so they sent the ore here to be smelted. By 1880 it was no longer economic to process Irish ores, so ore was then imported here from the Isle of Man. This continued until 1913, when the smelter was eventually shut down. Are there still quantities of lead or silver in the old mine, and would it be worth harvesting now?
Well, if there was silver, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be out there with a pick trying to get some of it. But I'm living here for nearly 40 years. I've never found a silver coin or a brass penny. But one of the downsides of living near here that we're prohibited from growing root crops because we still have deposits of lead all over the place. So even the water now, we have to be careful. I have my own well, but I had to stop doing it because of the lead deposits in the ground.
Looking around the tower, there are no traces of the ruins from the lead works. That's because these buildings are actually in the village of Ballycorus, some distance from here. That brings me to a lesser known but equally impressive feature of the lead works, a 1.4 kilometre long flue or tunnel that winds its way through the undergrowth of the hill. Here we are inside the flue. This was very well built, long sections of it are still intact. The mining company constructed this flue in 1836 to carry the fumes from the furnace and up to the chimney. Workers were employed to remove the lead deposits from the tunnel by hand, and many of them subsequently died of lead poisoning. Would you say that there was a full awareness of the dangers of lead at the time?
Well, the whole idea of building that flue itself was to, for environmental purposes, to make sure that the air was quite clean. But there was also a very profitable aspect to that flue itself because they cleaned it every second year. The flue itself cost £4,000, but extracting the waste from the flue made £2,000. So you can see it was a very profitable part of the mining process.
Do you think that these ruins could be turned into a tourist feature, or would you prefer them to be left as a curiosity?
The locals don't want people coming out to Ballycorus. So I think there's still that resistance that people are concerned about. This is the last wooded valley in South County Dublin. So I think people are very conscious that it's preserved that way itself. And I think there's a feeling that if it was reconstructed as a tourist attraction, it might, I don't know, it might disturb a lot of people. So we're very proud of, we like being living near it because it's part of history and something we can hold on to.
It's certainly very interesting, Brendan, and very interesting place indeed. Thank you very much for your time, Brendan.